World of Darkness is a new 24-man raid that released in patch 2.5. This raid is the final arc of the Crystal Tower storyline. In this video, we'll be going over each and every mechanic of the 4 bosses and 3 trash encounters in this raid as fast as possible, and hopefully guide yourselves and others to ensure a swift completion of this raid. We begin the raid by encountering 3 Garms. The 3 tanks will want to tank these mobs exactly where they are spawned, in a triangle formation. These Garms will have a front conal ability called Marrow Drain. The tank will want to avoid this ability, or you can silence and stun it. 20 seconds into the encounter, the room will be covered in 3 large AoEs which will deal a burning dot on all players within this AoE. The safe spots are in the middle, east, south and west. The tank will want to pull the Garms over to one of these safe spots and continue on with the battle. Another 20 seconds later, another set of these AoEs will come. The safe spots now are north, southeast and southwest. Simply have the tank rotate the mobs clockwise and continue on with the battle. Once all 3 Garms are killed, the 2-headed dragon along with sacrifice ninjas will spawn. Simply pull everything into the middle for the tanks to grab aggro on and AoE burn everything. Angra Menu is the first boss in the World of Darkness. This battle is a mix of Temple of Ka normal mode and turn 7. The tank will want to start this fight by keeping the boss dead center in the room. All other players will want to stay fairly close to the horizontal center of this encounter. Around 20 seconds into the encounter, the first mechanic will appear, Double Vision. The floor is split into 2 halves, we'll call these red and white. Both red and white side of this attack will give you a debuff. However, the debuff is different depending on what side you're on. The red side will give you a debuff called Brand of the Ireful, whereas the white side will give you a debuff called Brand of the Sullen. These debuffs will give you a stacking vulnerability to different abilities used by this boss. If you have 3 stacks of one debuff, you will instantly be killed by one of his abilities. The trick is to stand on the opposite side of the colour that you were previously on each time Double Vision is used. Doing so will remove your current debuff but give you the opposite debuff instead. Simply put, you must first stand on the red side, then the white, then the red, then the white, and repeat. This will ensure you take the least amount of damage possible from Angra Menu's attacks. At around 80%, the boss will use an ability called level 100 Flare. One player in the raid becomes stunned, chains are attached to him, and a few others as well. Each player in the raid must run out of the AoE, otherwise you will take a substantial amount of damage and the stunned player will die. There's also another mechanic called level 150 Flare. It's exactly the same, but it just deals a lot more damage. Eventually you'll run into a mechanic that we call the Roulette. 4 hourglasses will spawn on the outside of the boss's arena, with a finger pointing in the middle, rotating around these hourglasses. You'll want to kill all these hourglasses as fast as possible. The finger will always stop on the final hourglass that has been killed. All players must run out of the highlighted area, otherwise it will be an instant KO. I have not seen exactly what happens if you fail to kill all the hourglasses, but I can assume that it will be a raid wipe. The last and final mechanic is Mortal Gaze. This mechanic is exactly like Cursed Voices in turn 7. When you see this ability, you must face away from the boss. If you fail to do so, you'll receive a Doomed debuff. If you have this debuff, you must run onto a glowing platform to remove this debuff, otherwise you will die. The second trash encounter is a baby Skylar. This fight is incredibly easy. You start off the fight by burning down Skylar. Around 10 seconds into the fight, 6 forbidden gates will spawn. You'll want to burn these gates down as fast as possible. By doing so, you'll decrease the amount of ads which will spawn. If the gate is not burned down before the cast time of Void Call is up, a set of 4s will spawn. Bring them all into the middle and burn Skylar down with them. Afterwards, a blue chest will spawn. Open up the chest and you'll find a baby Xande. Again, kill off these gates, but this time aim for the middle ones first, as these will spawn Jorgumans, which do hit incredibly hard and they do have a lot of HP. Unfortunately in this clip, the tank did not bring the set of ads into the center, which did slow down the process. The second boss encounter is 5-headed dragon. One of the first moves he will do is an extremely large front cone AoE. The tank must avoid this ability, otherwise they will get hit for mass amounts of damage. Prominence is a skill, where small red AoEs will spawn on the ground. It is important to avoid these AoEs. After the explosion of these AoEs, white balls will spawn. You must DPS burn them down. It is important to kill them down before they've casted their ability Radiance. Radiance will cause these balls to explode and cause around 2k damage to all players in the raid. Too many of these balls alive and exploding at the same time will cause a raid wipe. One player in the raid will also be tethered to a red dragon. This dragon will inflict a stacking debuff, which will also inflict a damage over time. You must run through another player and pass on the dragon, just like Elegant Rot in turn 2, otherwise you will die. If you see another player with a purple marker on their head, it is imperative that all players run towards this player, stack on top of them to split the damage, otherwise this player will also die. Eventually green AoEs will spawn. Standing in these blobs will cause a ticking dot poisoning on you. Poison slimes will also spawn out of these pools of poison. It is important to burn down these adds as fast as possible, otherwise they'll merge into one gigantic toxic slime. If a toxic slime explodes, it will deal raid-wide AoE damage and a 10-second silence to all players in the raid, which means no raid healing. Ice Floor is another mechanic where you will see a spiral AoE on the ground. This AoE will then turn into a deadly freezing AoE which will gradually get bigger. Players caught in this AoE will become frozen for 20 seconds. Pyrotic is another mechanic similar to turn 6's Blighted Bouquet. If you have this debuff on you, you must stop everything that you're doing, otherwise you will receive an extremely fast ticking damage over time which burns you for 500 damage a tick. Soon enough, 5-headed dragon will want to have a raid with you, and disco lights will start flashing all over the place. He will start charging his signature move, Discordance. All players must drop what they're doing and run in front of the boss and AoE burn his heads down as fast as possible. Failure to do so will cause a raid wipe. Each taken down head will reduce the amount of damage taken from this ability. It also causes a stun on this boss. However, each head killed will give 5-headed dragon a haste buff, so do be careful. The third trash encounter is the return of Atomos. A left, B middle, C right. The objective here is rather simple, but very easy to get wrong. This fight is very much like turn 6. All players will want to stay roughly behind Atomos, excluding the tank. One player will be targeted and must run out to the sides of Atomos. Here, Atomos will devour this player and any other players within the proximity of the targeted player, followed by an ability called White Hole. This skill will spit out all players who have been devoured and throw them off the edge of the platform. Right after White Hole, Atomos will use the ability Shockwave. All players must stack up underneath Atomos and they will be pushed back, similar to Titan EX. As long as you're standing underneath Atomos and holding the W key, you will not get pushed off. A sacrifice soldier will spawn after each White Hole, as well as a spinning disc. Kill the giant, avoid the spinning disc, go back and kill Atomos. Rinse and repeat until the red bar in the duty UI is completely down. There are also glowing tablets on the top level of the platform. These will trigger the jump pads on the bottom floor for other parties in the raid. Just like the pads in the first Crystal Tower raid, it is important to step over and activate these pads to allow the other raids to get back up, otherwise it will be a wipe. Cerberus is the third boss of this raid, and by far my favourite. The objective of this battle is pretty simple. You need to give this poor little puppy a stomach bug and make him vomit until he dies. Before you begin the encounter, you will need to select one group that will be eaten. The first ability Cerberus will use is Tail Blow. This is a large rear cone AoE. Avoid it, otherwise you'll get hit pretty hard. At around 90%, Cerberus will break his chains. He will target one player. This player must run out to the back of the raid. A purple ball called Gastric Juice will spawn. Do not, under any circumstances, attack this ball. This ball is extremely important to make this puppy ill. Everyone, excluding the selected group, needs to stay away from this ball. the selected group will then run to this gastric juice and sit there until they have the mini debuff on them. After this, Cerberus will use an ability called Slabber. Slabber will target one player in the room. Again, just like gastric juice, the selected player must run away from the rest of the raid. A purple sludge will be spawned on the ground. Now, the players who have the mini debuff must run into the purple slabber, and this is where it gets pretty interesting. That group will now have to get eaten up by Cerberus and enter his intestines. If you're caught in the purple slabber without the mini debuff on you, Cerberus will run over, eat you up, and essentially one-shot you. Once inside Cerberus, you will go and attack its stomach wall, and the unknown mobs that spawn. I wonder how they got there. Repeat this until he throws you up. Nice, good job. The second this group gets thrown up, Cerberus will fall over. He'll have a glowing ring around him and start charging an ability called Reawakening. If this ability gets through, it will instantly wipe the raid. It is important that two players run over to the Magitech fetters and grab the chains and attach it to Cerberus before he casts Reawakening. On the outside world, you'll encounter a few cool mechanics. Hound of Hell is a forwards rampaging charge attack. He will turn around, face one random direction and start a cast timer. After the cast timer is up, he will charge in that direction. Everyone who gets caught in this will get ripped to shreds and may die. Wolfsbane are plant-like ads. They're just a nuisance and do nothing important, just burn them down fast. Every now and then, Cerberus will use a frontal cleave claw attack. All players hit by this skill will receive a slashing debuff. If this becomes a bit too much for the tank to handle, you may want to consider tank swapping. One other mechanic which many people don't know about is undulation. This is a roar from Cerberus which will cause hysteria on players who are not next to each other. Too many hysteria stacks and you will be terrored, which will make you temporarily lose control of your character. Pretty simple, just rinse and repeat. And now we are on to the final boss of this raid, the Cloud of Darkness herself. At the beginning of the encounter, you'll want to mark the floor accordingly. This is due to a mechanic halfway through the fight. Start the fight by nuking her. Eventually, one player will be marked and start getting blown up. This player must instantly run away and around raid, essentially kiting the purple beam that's hitting them. Each time the player is hit by this beam, they'll gain a stacking vulnerability and said player will die within a few seconds if they do not pay attention. Faint Particle Beam is a large AoE ability that she uses, simply avoid it. Every so often, the Cloud of Darkness will move off to another side of the platform. Everyone must run away from her line of sight, as she will fire a powerful charging beam through the center of this room. A circle AoE beam coming off it will also spawn. Attached to this beam is a falling comet. At a minimum, one player must run into these orbs, otherwise the raid will receive incredible amounts of damage. It is recommended to have at least 3 players in each comet to split up the damage. Halfway through the fight, the platform will glow yellow and dark clouds and storms will appear. Everybody in the raid must instantly stop what they're doing and DPS the clouds and storms. These clouds will float towards a Cloud of Darkness, and each cloud or storm absorbed will buff her signature ability, Flood of Darkness, which is a raid-wide AoE. All of these storms and clouds can be slowed, stunned and rooted in place to prevent them from reaching her. If the Cloud of Darkness eats 3 clouds and storms, it will be a raid wipe. Following the Flood of Darkness, Shadow Lurkers will spawn. These Shadow Lurkers will continuously jump around in the darkness. All range-based jobs must attack them at least twice. Any left around for too long will let off an AoE similar to Morble's Breath, giving you every single debuff imaginable. The last mechanic is Hypercharged Cloud. 3 clouds will spawn and the magic force field will spawn around them. Each group must run into their marker, run inside the hexagons, otherwise they will be trapped. Failure to kill these clouds will cause a raid wipe. Essentially, rinse and repeat. Well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this really fast guide about the World of Darkness. So thank you guys for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.